Welcome back, folks. I am Ravi Tangri, and I'm here with every weekday in September with What's Next. This is for business owners, for professionals, for CEOs. The challenge with this year has been that the rules have changed completely from total lockdown to now not really being sure how things are moving forward. How do we figure out how to move forward? And as I mentioned yesterday, there's three pillars that I've found, three pillars of success to be able to lead your way forward. If you are running your own business, if you're a CEO, or if you're a professional in these crazy, turbulent times. And the interesting thing is most people focus on just one, sometimes two of these, and they miss probably the biggest driver that moves forward because they're so focused on right now and how do we move forward. So I want to get into why it's so critical to focus on that and what those areas are. Now, if you've got any questions or comments, I can just type them into the comments that you have there, any insights, any ahas, and I can see them, I can respond to them, I can bring that into the conversation. So please feel free to join in with the conversation with what's been happening for you. And as I said, there are these three core pillars now in this whole new world that's with us for the foreseeable future, at least. And let's explore what those are. Yesterday, I did share with you what those were, that if you want to move to success, the first thing which most people focus on and is strategy. The word that's been overused lately is pivot. How do we pivot and to do respond to what's happening? And the key here, what a lot of people think is, oh, do I do something totally different? No, this is about identifying what your strengths are, what your expertise is, and how you can reapply it in a different context. It's about reinventing your strategy, and it's critical to be strategic in your innovation, not to just do a knee-jerk thing out of fear. Okay, so this actually takes some reflection, some contemplation, and some creative thinking in a lot of ways. Okay, so that's the first pillar, and this is the one actually that most people are focused on. How do I move? And in fact, the problem here is they're not even focused on strategy. They're focused on tactics. What do I do right now to get business now to move forward this week, this month? And the trouble is, if you're in that myopic mode, you could be shooting yourself in the foot, medium term, long term. So here it's absolutely critical to be able to step back and take a longer view. And this is the art of the pivot, to make sure it's a strategic pivot. Now, the second thing that you may have encountered is because we've moved online, now we've got to start interacting with people, whether it's our employees, with our customers online. And the thing is, how do you engage them? You cannot just talk at them. You cannot just have meetings that go on all day long like you did in the old workplace using Zoom, because that will just fry their brains and they will not be engaged. They will not be active. So there's a whole new art, a whole new science evolving about how do you actually engage people so that they are working and moving forward if it's your team. And with your customers, if you're holding meetings or conferences, you cannot just WebEx at them or Zoom at them and talk at them for days on end in a conference. It completely transforms the experience. So this is something some people are working with, but again, probably with limited results. Some things I've discovered in the last 6 months has been amazing processes I've found or I've created that allow you to actually engage people. We've been able to deliver conferences that keep 94% engagement and activation through the conference, which even online, and that so it absolutely is possible. So these are more business focused, but there's one other. If you look at success up here, and these are your key pillars, what you have is it's sort of like a diving board. It's not stable. The biggest pillar of moving forward that almost everybody ignores is leading you. And what I want to talk about today is why that's so critical. Because the thing is, if you are like a lot of people who are business owners, who are leaders out there, it's not just in your business, but in all of your life that people are turning to you. When things have been going upside down, who do they call that they need to talk to? I'm betting it's you. Who do people reach out to for support, for help when things are going inside, outside, upside, downside in their lives? Probably you. So you're supporting your employees, your customers, maybe your family, your friends, your community. Who's there to support you? Even before COVID hit, if I'm right, just going from people I've worked with through coaching, through my programs, I'm guessing that there's not a lot that you have that replenishes you. You've been giving everybody, and you feel guilty maybe because you can't give enough to everybody. But then all of a sudden, what do you get? You either just get to burn out, or you grab one evening and you flake out in front of Netflix for the night, and that's your time. And that's really not going to fill the, refill the well. That's just getting by. That was before all of this hit with the pandemic. Now we've got added concerns. There's huge stressors that have been happening. If you are running a business, if you probably have that stress on top of it, how do I find my way forward? There's been a lot of trauma that's come out of this, and all the uncertainty and the fear and so on. Plus, it's not just the pandemic. There's a lot of other caca that's going on around there that may or may not be impacting your business. So there's a huge amount of pressure there that needs to be released if you're going to find a way forward. And that's why this is so critical. Remember what I said about the strategy. In order to make a pivot work effectively, you can't just react, knee-jerk, fear-based reaction now. How do I get business now? You've got to be able to step back. You've got to have that self-discipline to be able to step out of that fear, to be able to step back and look at things, to be able to evaluate what are my strengths, what are the things that I and my team excel at, and then start to look at opportunities in a different way. That takes a lot of personal skill to be able to step out of those all of the stuff that's been going on, all of the uncertainty, to really be able to plan the way forward. The interesting thing is almost all of my work with strategy over the last nearly 30 years has been with organizations where the world has changed, but it's only one organization at a time. Now it's that way for everybody. And you have to be able to step out of that fear, that uncertainty, to be able to find a way forward. And that takes personal work to do that. I remember I was working in the 90s a lot with the military when they would downsides. There was a Air Force base near here that I worked with that had been cut by about a half. And then the remainder of the support staff had to bid for their jobs against private sector firms to keep their jobs. So they had to reinvent what they're doing. That's terrifying. It's the world has changed. But they had to be able to step out of that fear to be able to collectively get creative about how they could make it happen. And they did. And that's something that you absolutely can do. But it takes a lot of personal focus, personal development to be able to do that. In terms of engaging people online, Another thing, if you're stuck in fear and you're saying, we've got to move forward, and you're trying to drive the same agendas that you had before with work that you did with meetings, and you're trying to do it through Zoom or through WebEx or whatever, you cannot do that in the same way. People cannot function. You have to change what you're doing, how you're doing, rethink it. Now, I've always done some things online, but one of the things I found is a lot of my friends who are speakers and such are used to speaking live, in person. And it's a completely different beast when you are speaking through here. Like, I'm not going to go on here for an hour. That's ridiculous. You wouldn't stay engaged. If I did, I would build in some exercises that you could be involved in. And already, I still want you to share your thoughts, your insights, your ahas. But what you have to do is sometimes almost throw out half the content to really cut it to what's essential. And you can bring that content in, but you have to be able to then engage people to make it relevant to them, to understand it, to apply it. And now, for me, this is the way I've always worked, even in person. But for those who aren't used to it, it's a big shift. And to be able to do that, it takes, once again, a lot of personal discipline. And this all comes back to this leading you. Because what is your resilience with all the stuff that's happening? There's something that people are encountering is almost an exhaustion. It's hard to place, but it's like, I am so tired. I don't understand why. It's just I'm not as efficient. I mean, if you've been experiencing, what are things you've experienced? If you can share in the chat, what are some of the things you have experienced over the last while that maybe are a gap in this, because you're not investing that time to care for and look after yourself, to deal with all that you've gone through, so you've got resources to give to others. When you go through a lot of change, even though change is the natural order of things, our brains are geared to look for things the same. And when we go through as much change as we have, it can just totally throw you out. Everything from the lockdown, we've got to do things just at home, to the masks, to the social distancing, to all the other issues that are going out, like big issues about racism and such, this huge dialogue, that creates a huge weight on you. Now, the other thing is that what I find happens with a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, who are leaders, professionals, is they do take on things for others because everyone turns to you. Isn't that true? That when everyone needs something, you're the one that they turn to. And what they don't have anyone to go to for support. So if you are running a business, you've got people working for you, you're supporting them, and all the layers of it finally comes up to you. But then where do you turn? You might have a couple of friends, or you escape and have some wine for a night with some friends, but it really doesn't take away the thing. It just sort of puts it aside for an evening. There's a lot that you can do to build your resilience, and it's not tough. It's not complicated. It doesn't require a lot of time, but it requires the decision to say, I want to do that. I want to invest in me so that I can handle what I need. So I can do what's needed for my business, and I can do what's needed for my family, what's needed for my friends. But first, you've got to refill your own well. Another thing is, one of the things that we've been caught up in our society that I've noticed is almost a culture of busyness. It's like you've got to be busy. It's like busy. If you're not busy, you're not successful. And there are organizations I could name that you would know, big organizations where they run like crazy. They have, before this happened, they'd go running from meeting to meeting, and they were so busy, they never got a lot done. I've gone in as a consultant, and I'm going, I'm just blown away by how little they actually do. But they're crazy busy, so they're important. And there's an equivalence to importance comes from being busy. Uh, but success doesn't have to come from being crazy busy. Sustainable success, in my experience, has never come from being crazy busy consistently. There may be times when you have to, but that's a delusion that we have to release. And what happens if you've got that belief that you're busy, then you take on not just the stuff with your company. It's easier for you to do than to explain to them, right? So you do it, so you take it on, and then you take on the stuff for your friends, and then you take on the stuff for your family, and then you take on all the stuff for the community, because you take it on because it keeps you busy. And it sounds bizarre, but we do this, and this is what starts to sabotage us. And we set ourselves up for failure. Now, one of the things I'm going to get into tomorrow is how to start to diffuse that. And the biggest cause of self-sabotage is what I'm going to get into tomorrow, because it's something nobody else does, but it's something you do. And I would put good money that you probably do this, based on decades of experience on working with thousands of people. It's not something you do consciously, but it's something that's ingrained into us from when we're very young. And especially if you're in a leadership position, this is something, or if you're a business owner, this is something that I'm willing to bet that you do, that really builds, that really contributes to your holding yourself back, to things going wrong. Do you find that you're constantly dealing with crises, that things are happening and all's going on? You've got to rush, you've got to respond to all of this. Well, if that's happening all the time, not just now, I've got bad news for you. There's only one person at the scene of every crime, because the people around probably change, but it's you. So what is it that's happening? And this is not consciously, but in your unconscious mind, that you keep creating situations like that. The good news is we can turn that around very, very easily. It does not take a lot, but it takes that willingness to do something different. And that sort of busying and self-sabotage was happening before COVID. Now you add all the things that have happened here. If you're feeling pressure, you're not alone. And what I want to focus on these next few weeks is how we can start to reduce this, or reduce the self-sabotage and build on this. Just to let you know, next week I am going to be kicking off a 5-day Stop Self-Sabotage Challenge, totally free, that you can sign up for, where every day we're going to be focused on how do we move things forward, and how do we stop those patterns that hold us back. And I'm going to focus on that biggest single cause of self-sabotage, which we will get into tomorrow on tomorrow's live. So every weekday in September, I'm going to be doing a live here that's going to be bringing you some resources on this at noon Eastern time, 1 o'clock Atlantic. It's 9 Pacific, and 5 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time. So if you're watching this later on, jot down any thoughts in the comments about what what may be a challenge to you in terms of moving forward, how you find yourself held back, where the pressures you are, so that we can start to focus things on the right issues for you. And if you want to catch these lives, they're going to be streaming every weekday on Facebook and YouTube. I'm also putting the videos onto LinkedIn and Instagram. We will see you tomorrow as we dive into that biggest cause of self-sabotage, and then start to explore how do we diffuse it. Thank you. I'm Ravi Tangri, and this is What's Next. We will see you tomorrow if I can find the button.